by swearing you in. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
This was the first public hearings that we've had into the impeachment inquiry into President Donald Trump, and we heard from two seasoned, longtime American diplomats who were talking about, from their perspective, what they saw in terms of Trump's dealings with Ukraine and the overall policy of the Trump administration toward Ukraine. What we learned in these hearings is that there was confusion, there was uncertainty oftentimes about what the posture of the U.S. Relationship with Ukraine was under Donald Trump, and a lot of questions about whether a package of military aid that Congress had approved for Ukraine was being held up so that Trump could get the Ukrainians to launch an investigation into Joe Biden, who is one of the frontrunners for the Democratic nomination, and the Democratic National Committee.
And it is my honor to serve with all of these patriotic Americans. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambassador Taylor.
Mr. Chairman, I'm appearing today at the committee's request to provide my perspective on the events that are...
The Democratic strategy is to really put the Trump White House's relationship with Ukraine under a magnifying glass and look at it through the prism of people who are non-political, who are not opponents of President Trump or supporters of President Trump, are just career diplomats who sort of know how the process is supposed to work and looked at this situation and said, hey, there's something wrong here, there's something going on here. They're trying to make this separate from politics. They're trying to make this something that is about abuse of power, is about whether the President of the United States misused his office or tried to use his position to advance his own personal political interests. Republicans say that this is a complete political charade, that this is simply about trying to undermine the Trump presidency, get him out of office, invalidate the last election, and that Democrats are just grasping at anything they can to make that happen. And they try to portray the situation with Ukraine as essentially above board. They basically say that if you've got questions about why the aid to Ukraine was held up, you should just look at the fact that the aid to Ukraine was eventually released. If you have questions about whether the President of the United States wanted investigations into Joe Biden or into the DNC, you should look at all of the evidence, they say, that bolsters the need for those investigations. They are, at least on the House side, pretty much defending Trump on the substance of what he did, and essentially saying there's not only nothing impeachable here, there's not even really anything wrong with his behavior.
For your respect as we proceed with today's hearing,
Mr. Chairman.
it is the intention of the committee to proceed without disruptions.
Mr. Chairman.
Before
This particular set of committees began their investigations that the Trump administration eventually released the military aid, correct?
He said those things. Yes or no?
Mr. Ratcliffe, if I can respond.
My time is short.
Your time
yes
is
or
short.
no?
Much of what we heard today was already known, and that was expected because both Kent and Taylor had already done lengthy private depositions, and we saw the transcripts of those depositions released. There was one new wrinkle, one new piece of information from Bill Taylor. He says that he has learned in recent days that a staff member of his overheard a conversation between President Trump and another diplomat, Gordon Sondland, in which Trump could be heard on the phone asking about the investigations. We expect we will learn more about this call next week when Gordon Sondland has his moment on Capitol Hill in front of cameras and the American people. Trump says he does not remember this phone call that was described today, but that was really the only new substantive thing that we learned out of this hearing.
The First Lady with us today, and the First Lady of Turkey, thank you very much for being here. This is a great honor to have you. And we had a wonderful and very productive meeting. Before we start, I would like to thank...
So the strategy from the White House is essentially to have the president out there at the forefront of it, defending his actions, calling this a political charade, urging, his supporters to see this as just a witch hunt. There's not much in terms of, real organization that's happening, but they actually feel like they're being pretty successful with that strategy of having the president just out there defending his actions and encouraging his supporters to do the same.
I did not watch it. I'm too busy to watch it. It's a witch hunt. It's a hoax. I'm too busy to watch it. So I'm sure I'll get a report.